Welcome to True Crime Boss. We're discussing the brutal and horrific slaying of Rebekah Byler, a 23-year-old pregnant mother of two in Amish country, Pennsylvania. There's rural America, and then there's Amish country, which is a throwback to a time long forgotten. Horse-drawn carriages, very little modern technology, just peace and God-fearing people who love their families and work very, very hard. And in Sparta Township, we have a farming community and this young family. On Monday, February 26th, Andy Byler left his wife Rebekah to go to work, and he returned home for lunch and found her executed on the floor. After the discovery of Rebekah's body, a major investigation ensued. The Pennsylvania State Police, who I have worked with hundreds of times on many, many cases, they are the best in the business. But folks, a crime in Amish country is made more difficult by the lack of technology in this community. Amish people typically do not have cell phones unless it's related to their work. We all know what a valuable tool cell phones are in these kinds of cases. You can track a defendant, track conversations, track web histories, track locations. You have none of that in a case of this nature because this is a community that feigns technology. So right now, what is one of the best tools for law enforcement is really not going to be present in this particular investigation. We have dirt roads, very few opportunity for witnesses to be nearby. You don't have a community. This is not a community that would have video cameras outside of their residences, again, because these are modern technologies that Amish people view as things that could get in the way of their relationship with God. So they feign technology unless it's absolutely necessary. This is going to be a challenge to the investigators. But, ladies and gentlemen, you have to take everything we have here. We have a young mother dead and a report from someone that a red Jeep was in their driveway. Now, that's an outlier, folks. Somebody saw that red Jeep in the driveway of Rebekah Byler's property. That was a huge, huge piece of evidence. We were talking about it earlier this week on Nancy Grace, and that particular piece of evidence jumped out at everybody on the panel. They're like, wow, a red Jeep in Amish country in a driveway on the property says something. When you get to a murder scene, you're looking for things that aren't supposed to be there or don't necessarily fit in, like a knife sheath in the second floor of a bedroom. That sound familiar in cases we've covered in the past? You're always looking for things that would have been potentially introduced by the third party. Although this particular Amish community mixes with members of northwestern Pennsylvania, not in the Amish community, it is rare to see vehicles, motor vehicles, at the homes of members of the Amish community. So a red Jeep present that morning jumps out at investigators. So folks, you're looking at individuals with red Jeeps that may have a tie to that particular residence. And we've had significant developments over the past 48 hours in this case. Folks, an individual named Shawn Cranston, a 52-year-old resident of a neighboring town of Corry, has been arrested and charged with shooting Rebekah Byler and slashing her throat. Here's what's been gleaned from the complaint and the supporting documents at this point. In addition to being shot, it's reported that Rebekah Byler's throat was slashed. Mr. Cranston has also been charged with the death of an unborn child, a female child. We know that Rebekah was expecting. We now know that that was a little girl inside of her that was also killed. we're learning a little bit about Cranston. I did as much of an investigative dive into his life as I can. I came up with some online videos of Cranston that seemed to me that he has a chip on his shoulder and an attitude. I've encountered people like this in my profession. He struck me as a hothead, to be perfectly honest. And again, these are my judgments based on what I've seen. But one of the major developments over the past 48 hours is a woman who is not given her name has identified herself as the daughter of Shawn Cranston. And she's in her 20s. And she said that that particular home that the Bylers lived in was the home of a previous Amish family that adopted Cranston's grandson. She believes that Cranston may have been going there to see his grandson or to bring him home. If that's true, this is a tragic case that is even compounded in its tragedy because we're talking about a case of mistaken identity now. This isn't even the family that adopted Cranston's grandchild. What appears to have happened here is that Cranston shows up there armed with a gun and a knife, apparently, busts in the door to get his grandchild, and Rebekah confronted him or was there, and he shot her and slashed her throat in this peaceful, God-fearing community. I think it's worth noting that in addition to the charge of murder of an unborn child, in Pennsylvania, we have an aggravator in support of the death penalty. If the victim of a homicide is pregnant and that pregnancy is into the 6th month or 3rd trimester, or the slayer knew the individual they killed was pregnant. What does that mean? That means we in Pennsylvania can seek the death penalty against Shawn Cranston in this case. And I hope the District Attorney of Crawford County thinks long and hard about pursuing death against Shawn Cranston. Now, here's a complication that maybe people aren't thinking about. The Amish community is against the death penalty. And the very people that Mr. Cranston is alleged to have victimized may not want to see him killed. It's ironic and sad. But my recommendation is that Mr. Cranston's life should hang in the balance here, ladies and gentlemen, for what he did to Rebekah Byler and that little girl who never had a chance at life. It's an aggravator for death, and it should be pursued. And that means, ladies and gentlemen, the jury, after Mr. Cranston is convicted, would have the opportunity to weigh that aggravating circumstance in support of his death, if he's convicted. I mean, this is a particularly brutal crime. You have someone who, as it's been reported, that Rebekah was shot in the head and that her throat was slashed. So a couple of things. Why that's significant in the law is that when you have a lethal weapon and aim it at a vital part of the body, and the head clearly is a vital part of the body, you can infer in the intention to commit first-degree murder. When you take a knife and slash somebody's throat, also a deadly weapon, also a vital part of the body, additional intent to commit first-degree murder. This is clearly a first-degree murder situation. It was clearly, as alleged, Cranston's intention to kill Rebekah Byler at this point. A particularly brutal crime. I mean, my God, you're shooting someone in the head. Why you have to take it to the next level and slash their throat, or slash their throat and then shoot them in the head is confounding to me, but I've seen it before, sadly. When you look at the nature of this crime, take the fact that we have a 23-year-old mother who's pregnant, okay, against Cranston, who's a 52-year-old, a hefty, capable guy. He appears to be quite strong. And just in his attitude, you can tell he's got like a bravado about him. So he's someone who clearly has like a hair trigger. I mean, this is brutal. You think about what he did. He shot her in the head, then slashed her throat. I mean, you think you made your point here, Mr. Cranston? I mean, this is a brutal, brutal crime. He could have just walked out the door. This crime just appears to have happened in the front room of the house. So at any point, he could have walked out the door. Here's the problem. Cranston leaves a witness who can identify him as being on the property and trespassing. So his position, I'm sure at that point, if it's truly Byler was a mistaken identity victim here, was to take out a living eyewitness for his presence on the property. The only good fortune of the day was that he didn't kill the other two children in the house. Rebekah's husband, Andy, and her children. Where do they go from here? They've lost a mother. They have a sibling they'll never know. I think that these folks need to dive back into their faith. I think their faith is, Amish community is a very tight-knit community. And that word community means something to these folks. They are a large family. They help one another. They take care of one another. And the hope is that this young family will have the support of that religious community and find the strength to move on in their faith and hopefully heal from this. Although I don't know how you could ever heal from this. These are the kind of events that could go the other way and cause somebody like Andy Byler or his children to lose their faith. So the hope is that they're okay in the long run. You could be in a peace-loving community like Amish, Pennsylvania, and violence of this nature can find you. And it's just such a troubling thought. It shakes you. And I think that's what's jumping out about this case in particular. You know, everyone knows that the Amish people live this simple, nonviolent, traditional, anti-technology way of life. And when they're invaded by an outsider like this, who had a bone to pick with people that lived in this home prior to them, and execute this young mother, it just shakes you. It really rattles you. I think that's what's so disturbing about this case. You know, there's always been a fascination with the Amish lifestyle. It's a large tourist attraction. Breaking Amish was a big show. And you look at this and you say, like, this is a lifestyle that's always been curious to people. How in 2024 you have this community of 80 to 90,000 people that live in a time that in a manner that time has forgotten, really. And then you have a brutal killing like this that just shakes that community. It's fascinating. It's a fascinating case. It's a tragic case, but intriguing. And it's one that will continue to generate a tremendous amount of attention in northwestern Pennsylvania and across the country. And we're going to continue to cover it.